The Trump administration slapped new sanctions on Russian government officials and oligarchs with ties to President Vladimir Putin on Friday, along with companies they own or control. This comes as the president continues to push for a withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria, reportedly telling his national security team this week that he'd ideally like to begin the exit within the next 6 months. Here to talk about it all, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who joins me now from South Carolina. Welcome, Senator. Good to see you again. So what do you make of these latest sanctions against a good number of oligarchs very close to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think it's a big step in the right direction. You got to hit Russia in the wallet. You know, a few people live very large in Russia at the expense of others, and hitting Putin's inner circle, making sure they can't take their ill-gotten gain and buy houses and yachts throughout the world is a good first step.
Anything, I mean, would you recommend sanctions against Putin himself and some of his...
absolutely.
You would. You would go, you'd sanction him personally.
Yeah, well, see, the British say that they believe that the attempted assassination inside of Britain of a former Russian spy, British citizen, was orchestrated by Putin. Our intelligence community believes that Putin approved of the hacking into the 2016 election. Right. Our intelligence community tells us he's up to it again. Nothing happens in Russia of any consequence without him knowing it. That's the upside of being a dictator. You know about everything. But here's what I would do even bolder. I would take all the customers that Russia sells oil and gas to, all the major customers, and see if I could provide oil and gas through some alternative to Russia. That would really begin to cripple their economy. Interesting.
And we are increasing oil and gas exports toward an end to get there over time. Let's turn to Syria. You heard the president this week saying, I want to get out. Quote, unquote, that's a very direct signal. Now he has backed off from that immediately at the request of his advisors. On the other hand, everybody in the Middle East heard what he said about, I want to get out. Is that a smart strategy?
I don't know if the damage is done to the point it can't be reversed. I hope not. The president really chided President Obama, for setting a timetable on when he was going to end military operations. We all lampooned Obama because it's a pretty dumb idea. So General Votel told me that the hard part with ISIS is yet to come. It's not just defeating them on the battlefield. You have to hold the territory. So if we say 6 months from now we're leaving Syria, ISIS will come back with a vengeance, and nobody would be happier with that decision than the Iranians.
Because what happens if we do decide we've cleaned up ISIS, you declare victory, you come home, you say Syria is somebody else's problem. Play out that scenario for us. What happens then?
Well, it changes everything President Trump said in Riyadh. He stood up before the Arab world and said, you need to be better allies, you need to pay more, and they should pay more. They should do more in Syria and other places. But I stand with you against two threats. I stand with you against Iranian expansion. I stand with you against radical Sunni Islam. Complete opposite of what Obama did. Obama was seen by the Arabs in the Mideast as being more concerned about Iran than them. But he made a very historic speech that I stand with you against these two common threats. If we pull out of Syria, it undercuts everything he told the Arabs. Syria, in short order, becomes a safe haven for Hezbollah. Iran and Russia will dominate Syria. It's a nightmare for Israel. ISIS will come back, and there will be new attacks launched against Western interests from Syria. And North Korea will look at Trump and say, hey, this guy's all talk.
Well, I guess the response to that would be, you know what, that's a sort of a worst-case scenario. But look, it's other people's responsibility to take care of that. Israel can take care of itself. The Saudis should ante up. And it's not our responsibility. Why don't the French and the Germans and other people take care of the refugee problem? Because that's where the refugees are going. Now, that's not what I believe in, but that's the response you get from a lot of people.
Well, here's what I tell those people. Who takes care of America? Are the Israelis going to defend America? Are the French and the Germans going to defend American interests? That argument falls apart if you believe ISIS is a threat to the United States. That argument falls apart if you believe Iranian expansion in the Mideast is not only hurtful to our allies, but hurtful to the United States. The one thing I've learned, when we don't lead, other people will. So if you believe ISIS is of no concern, that the attacks that happen in Paris can't happen in the United States, then leave. I can't think of a Mideastern country that I would outsource our national security to. Building a border wall makes sense to me to deal with the threats coming from south of our border. What are we going to do to deal with Mideast threats? Outsource them to other countries? I think we need a forward deployed force of Americans to protect the homeland.
But is that a recipe, Senator, for a long-term deployment that costs enormous amounts of money and a lot more troops than the 2,000 or so we have on the ground there? And can we afford that kind of a commitment? Will the American people support that kind of a commitment?
The last time we ignored radical Islamic threats in the Mideast or in the region was Afghanistan. How much did it cost us from the 9/11 attacks? So here's what I think. I think you can take less than the number of troops we have in South Korea, 28,000, put them in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan, less than 28,000 troops, and keep the homeland protected. The only thing I can tell you, if you leave Syria now, ISIS will come back like they did when we left Iraq. How much money has the world spent, the United States spent, due to the withdrawal from Iraq? So if you're looking at this from dollars and cents, it's going to cost a thousand times more to leave and let ISIS come back than it will to hold the territory once we destroy them.
All right, and I'm sure you've made this argument to President Trump. We will follow this debate as it goes. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come